We're back and we're repairing this crash-damaged BMW which I dragged out of Copart in the last episode. I've already done quite a bit of the work, including a front wing, a headlight and a new set of wheels. I ripped out the interior because I wanted that for myself, but we now got to see if hard work really does beat talent and whether we can make a profit on this old thing. So let's get straight back into it. I'm Ben, welcome back to the shed. Well, my eBay replacement engine mounts turned up in record quick time, literally like less than 2 days. So hopefully it's the right one, and then we'll get it on here double quick and see if we can get this thing wrapped up. Looks about right from the top. Perfect, let's get it on. And there was me thinking that taking the old mount out was going to be the difficult part of this job. I've been at this for absolutely hours trying to get that new one in. For whatever reason, it just wouldn't line up properly, and I've just been trying and trying and trying. Of course, access is terrible, but we're there now, so hopefully that's sorted all our steering issues out. So we better take it for a spin, I suppose. What's the chances of the battery still being full? Well, it starts up nicely now, but I don't know if you can hear that. That vibration is still there. So when you crank, something's knocking against the body underneath. So something's obviously been tweaked by the accident, but I can't see anything down there. So whether it's the exhaust or something like that, but it doesn't do it every time. So it's not a big issue, but obviously it's something that wants sorting. But anyway, let's take it for a spin and we'll see how the steering is now. Oh, much better. Back to the lightness we've come to know and love with the X3. Whenever you do any front suspension work, your tracking's always going to be out to a certain extent, but because we've had an accident here as well, we've got an increased likelihood that the tracking is out. And actually, when I drove it up the drive, it really did feel weird on the steering, as if the wheels were towing out massively. Now, I don't have the proper kit or the skills to set it properly, but what I can do is basically set the front wheels as close to parallel as I can get them, which will make it drive a lot nicer and enable me to get to a tyre shop to have it set properly. So I've got two pieces of timber that are wider than the car, and they're pushed hard up against the front and the rear of the tyre, and that gives me a plane across both front tyres to measure between the grooves. Now I'm just going to set the steering straight ahead. Then it's just a case of measuring the distance between two similar grooves on the tyres. So this obviously depends on having a matched pair of tyres on the front, but that's reading out at 1439 mil. So we do the same on the back of the tyre now and compare those two values, and then I want to adjust the trap rod end until those two values meet. So what was it? 1439. It does help if you've got a helper. I told you it was out. Do you want to know what this side is? 1410. So that's 29 mil across the short distance between the front and the rear of the wheels. That's a 29 mil discrepancy. So that means the front of the wheels is 29 mil further apart than the rear of the wheels. Let's sort that out. Now, if we're feeling lazy, I shouldn't have to measure the rears again, just the fronts, because if we find the mean of the two values we've got and just apply that to the front, then the back should follow suit, but we will just double check. Okay, we're in the passenger side wheel arch. There's the trap rod end, and that's the nut we've got to adjust. Well, we've got to slacken that nut and then twist this rod here to adjust it, which looks nice and inaccessible. If you want to reduce the chances of having to do jobs like this when you buy your next car, then the thing to do is use Vehicle School. Simply enter the registration number and hit check car. Immediately it feeds back some basic details about the car, like make, model, year, colour and mileage, as well as a library image of the car and a score out of 1,000 to give you an indication of how good the car is. Scrolling down, you get other information like MOT, tax and ULEZ status, as well as a lifespan tool where Vehicle School uses all the available data to actually predict the lifespan of the car. Believe it or not, all of this information is available on the free check, but if you want absolutely everything available, use my code for some discount. And just remember, you can never have too many cars. There we are, that's nicely freed off now. I just had to get a little bit of heat on it with the blowtorch, but I didn't want to melt my phone, so... Right, so we want to shorten it now, so I've wound it out a little bit to wind it back in again, just to freshen up the threads a bit. But we want to wind it in a fair old way and then get back to our measurement of whatever it was I've forgotten. So this is effectively shortening the connection between the fronts of the front wheels. So bringing them closer together. Well, that's that set. I've actually gone to 1423 on the front and just measured the rear, and it's 1425. So we got basically 2 mil of toe in, which is what the vast majority of cars normally have. Some sports cars or race cars have a bit of toe out, but that's for sharper turn-ins and stuff. So for a ropey old X3, this should be fine. Well, it's crunch time now. I've got to paint this new wing, and believe me, I am not looking forward to it. Shall we get on with it? Now, when it comes to doing mechanical jobs on cars, I don't mind having a go at most things, but when it comes to repairing body panels and paint work, then that really is not my bag. My knowledge of such things extends to basically whatever I could pick up 20 years ago from Ed China on Wheeler Dealers.
All it needs is a bit of filler and a bit of paint.
And even he's been known to get it wrong. So you can imagine how I feel taking on painting a wing on a car, something that I've never done before. Now, to do a proper job of this, a body shop would probably take this wing off and paint it separately so they can rub it down in all the nooks and crannies that you can't get to. But because of where it is, if I pop the bonnet, open the door and take this wheel arch trim off, I can actually get to all the hidden corners of it and mask them up. It's only this front little piece here that might pose a bit of an issue. The army are coming by the sound of it. Oh yeah, get a load of this. Sorry about that, where were we? Oh yeah, so I'm not gonna bother taking the wing off because that's just a load more work. I've got to take off the bumper and the headlight and everything that I've just put back on. And really, this job isn't going to pay me to do a really good job of. Not that I think I have the skills to do that anyway, but so for those of you with even less idea about this than me, the basic idea is that we've got to scuff up this wing to start with to get rid of the shiny top lacquered surface, to give the paint what's called a key, and that's something for the new paint to grab onto. So some undulations in the surface so that the paint has something to grip onto. Because if you don't do that, then it'll slide off or flake off or whatever. But firstly, I'm going to take this wheel arch off, the side repeater out, mask up the front here, and then I can use a Scotch pad to scuff up the surface of the wing and get some paint on it. We don't need any primer in this case because there's no bare metal. We're painting on top of an existing paint job. So as far as I understand it, we don't need any primer, but paint and then probably some lacquer over the top to hopefully make it look as good as it can. Bless me. So you know when you hear people say all the gear and no idea, this is what they mean. So by gear, I have proper automotive masking paper, decent quality masking tape, and some decent quality paint. But decent quality materials do not equal a decent quality job. That's where the no idea bit comes into play. So I've scuffed up the wing. I want to do just a little bit more, and then I'm going to wipe it down as best I can with some solvent. So I think brake cleaner and a clean rag are good enough to get rid of any kind of grease or oil or road film or whatever, and obviously all the dust from rubbing it down. Fortunately, the day I've picked to do it is nice and sunny, but it's not too hot, and the wind is minimal. The last few days have been quite windy, so not ideal because it's so dusty around with the dry weather. So let's do that and then get some paint on it. You know, I said it wasn't windy. Leave a post in the comments to tell me your least favourite weather type. Currently, mine is wind. But anyway, there it is, all masked up. I'm going to give it one final wipe over with the brake cleaner and an extra clean cloth and then get some paint on it. Commence shaking. Well, what do you think of that? It could be argued that that is the worst paint job I have ever seen. I said it wasn't very good, didn't I? And let's be fair, this is the proof. Well, where do we start? I mean, if I was aiming for the texture of sandpaper, then I'd be pretty happy with that finish. But that is honestly, listen to this. It is sandpapery rough. Now, I think, because I obviously went and jinxed it yesterday by saying, oh, it's not windy and it's not sunny. Well, guess what happened after I said that? The sun came out and it was ragingly hot, and this was in direct sunlight because I was trying to get a good quality shot for the video. But of course that makes it really, really hot. And I think when you paint in excessive heat, it kind of dries too quick and it doesn't allow the paint to like settle on the surface. So I think that's what's happened. So as the droplets have hit the surface, they've gone off and caused this really, really rough texture. I don't know if you can see it, but I've also got like a really stripy finish. I was trying to put the paint on in different directions, striping one way and then the other to get a real even finish, but it's just not worked and it just looks absolutely awful. You can see here the color difference between the original silver and the gray. So, I mean, it's better than what it was, but it's still, I mean, for the can literally says exact color match on it. And I mean, that's like just not true. It looks very different to the original. In fact, I think I've got a theory. Hold that thought. No, I did think that maybe the original color wasn't a metallic color and that this was, because this has got like this super glittery and when you're spraying it, the air just is full of glitter. So it's way more metallic than the original paint, which isn't sparkly at all, even if you catch the sunlight with it. But the original color is space gray metallic. So I don't know what's going on there, but this bit looks pretty awful still because I still got the wheel arch trim to go on. That'll tidy it up a bit. But yeah, let me know your suggestions of how to improve my skill as a painter. Because, I mean, well, the one thing was I thought I'd done a really good job of masking up, but obviously I've done an awful job because there's overspray on the tyre, there's overspray on the door. I don't know how I've managed to get, this was completely covered in masking paper. It's on the wing mirror, the window, the front window, the bonnet. Oh, and then obviously I completely neglected to mask the headlights, so that's covered in it. But I mean, that'll come off with a bit of wet and dry. But having said all that, if you come with me, looks all right from here, doesn't it? That's the main thing. How it comes out in photos and from a distance. Paintwork probably best left to the professionals, or either that, or I'll buy another car that needs like a full respray, and so I have to dedicate hundreds of hours of my life to perfecting the skill. Let me know what you'd rather see, because I know which one I'd pick. But anyway, let's get this wheel arch trim back on and finish the job off. By the way, if you've got a BMW and you haven't got one of these, buy one. They're so good for doing these plastic rivets. Well, if we're feeling generous, I think we can just about tick that job off the list, can't we? Now, as we know, BMWs suffer with a pretty much permanent list of fault codes in the memory. But the fact that this car has been involved in an accident means that there's a high likelihood that there's even more fault codes on the list of this one. And that's evident by the number of warning lights on the dashboard. But on that note, very kindly, I've just been sent this, which is the KINGBOLEN Ediag Elite OBD scanner. Now, I know what you're thinking, Ben, that does not really roll off the tongue, but fair is fair. and I've been sent it for free, so I'm going to test it and give you an honest review. So you just find your OBD port, plug it straight in, then all you've got to do is turn the ignition on and fire up the app. Now, for the BMW owning legends amongst you, firstly, well done, but if you're used to using input to diagnose stuff on your car, you'll want to see this. This is so much better. You have to quickly register the tool on the app, then download a data package for your specific manufacturer, and then you can go through. It's all self-explanatory. You pick the model variant, and then you can do a whole vehicle scan, and it brings up every single module of the car and tells you whether or not it has any fault codes and how many there are. Then you can work through systematically, clear them all. You can look at live data, you can perform diagnostic operations, all sorts. I won't bore you with it all, but take it from me, it'll be 60-ish quid, very well spent. So as predicted, there were a load of fault codes associated with the accident I was able to clear, and there was a couple left over. So the two we know about for the seat headrests and the front left wheel speed sensor, which is still giving trouble, which is the main reason that we've got the warning lights on the dashboard still. If you're in the market for a new OBD scanner, check out the link in the description for a discount on this one. Oh, and whilst you're down there, can you just hit the subscribe button too, please? Thanks very much. In the first episode, do you remember I said that I thought it was going to be too difficult to take these pieces of trim off? Well, obviously that turned out not to be the case, and they couldn't really have been easier to get off. So I whipped them out and replaced them with some silver ones, which matched the black interior much better. And it also gives me the potential to actually sell this kit and make a bit more money off this thing. And talking of money, we better run through the finances of this thing to see if we're actually going to make any profit or not. Money, money, money. So to buy the car on Copart, including all the fees, was £560. Recovery was £100. The wheels and tyres I already owned, but I valued them at £150. The engine mount was £19. The paint for the wing was £31, and the bottom line was £26. So all in, it owes me £886. But unlike wheeler dealers, I'm also going to account for the labour. So I've spent 6 days on this car, and I've attributed what I think is a very reasonable £150 a day. So that comes in at £900. So all in, the grand total, this car owes me £1,786. But I can hear you asking, Ben, what is this car actually worth? Well, that's the bad news. Even if I was able to get this car through an MOT, which because of the seats, I'm not, because I can't get that airbag light off without spending yet more money, this car would still only be worth probably 800 quid tops. Ugh. Yes. Well, there we are. At the moment, it's looking highly unlikely that in this case, hard work is going to beat talent and deliver us a profit. But join me for the third and final episode of this mini-series to see if I can pull something else out of the bag just to get us back in the black. Red, black. I can never understand that one. Black, yeah. Profit. Anyway, if you're still here at this point in the video, I'm going to take a wild stab in the dark and guess that you might be enjoying it just a little bit at least. But the vast majority of you watching are still unsubscribed. So if you could do me a massive favor and hit that subscribe button, that is if you want to see more of these videos, I'd really appreciate it because it gives us a massive boost and enables me to make more of these videos like this. Anyway, take care of yourselves and I'll see you in the next one.